Welcome to the Manufacturing Matters podcast with the Council of Industry. Join us as we bring you inspiring stories, interviews, and insights from across the Hudson Valley that will revolutionize the way you think about manufacturing. This podcast is proudly sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, a leading accounting and advisory firm dedicated to helping businesses thrive in the manufacturing sector. With their industry knowledge and strategic guidance, PKF O'Connor Davies ensures that manufacturers have the financial insights and support they need to achieve success.
Rachael Parker, president of Fair-Rite Products. Welcome to the Council of Industry podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Harold. It's great to be here.
So Fair-Rite Product, tell us a little bit about what that is and maybe a little bit about the play on words.
Sure. So the play on words came from my father, who started the company in 1952. So he was actually an English lit major, but because he was in the Navy back with World War II and he got a lot of electronics training, he was able to understand kind of the purpose of ferrite and how it's used. So Fair-Rite, Fairrite, is our company name. Ferrite, Ferrite, not to be confused with ferret, um, is is an electronic component that's ceramic, that's pressed under tons of pressure and sintered at thousands of degrees that are used in pretty much any electronic device on the market today in order to function properly. So that was his punniness, was ferrite and
That's
Fair-Rite.
funny. That is funny. I had no idea it was an English lit major. I had the pleasure of knowing your father, and that makes a lot of sense, actually. He was
Oh, yes.
a lot of fun to talk to. A lot of fun to talk to. And so these components are used in all kinds of electronic devices, but
Mhm.
what's their purpose?
So the main market that Fair-Rite is used in, so FAIR, our company is used in, is suppression. So the FCC has certain standards that every electronics that go to market have to pass, and so they can't radiate too much emission and they can't be susceptible to too much of emissions from the outside. So in order to protect the unit and the units around that electronic device, ferrite is used to suppress the electromagnetic interference that it could create.
Okay. And so your customers are some of the big electronics companies people were familiar with?
Yeah, so a lot of our customers are either in automotive, they're in medical, industrial, pretty much any electronic device, a ferrite is in it. So, but again, I mean, we're seeing a lot of uptick in the automotive market, especially with the electrification of vehicles. And, you've got your heads up display and you've got 17 million airbags now, and all of those things can interfere with each other. And so ferrite has been used a lot in those applications because you definitely don't want your airbag going off after you turn on your radio or turn your
Right.
blinker. So there's a lot that goes into their medical devices. Like when COVID hit, we were considered essential because we were in respirators. We were in a lot of those types of medical equipment that was necessary during that time.
Sure. So would they, in the electrification of automobiles, I think that's kind of fascinating. People, can
Mhm.
certainly relate to that. Do you work with engineer designers from on the customer side, or do you have like a standard product line that they can choose from? How does that generally work?
Both, actually. So we do have our catalog parts that and we go to market with kits. So a signal solution kit is what we put into labs because labs is where end customers go to test their product for what I was talking about before, that FCC standard. So they go there to get certified to say, yes, you passed. And when you don't,
Okay.
our kit is right there with all of our products to say, oh, well, you need to snap it. And so we're going to put this product on your part. And then you can pass the test and then you can sell your product in the market.
Oh,
So there's those products. And then we also have a state of the art machine shop here for those that maybe the size is different or they know they're going to have EMI issues. So they come to us and they need a specific shape. A lot of the automotive customers, they have bus bars, which are a very specific shape that need to have a ferrite to go around it. So they're more of a
mm,
frame core rather than a round core. And so we can machine it up within a few days, send it to the customer, and they can do their testing on it and then say yay or nay, and then we can move on from there. So we do a little bit of both,
Wow,
or a lot of bit of
that's
both.
fascinating. Good. Well, hopefully a lot of it of both.
Hopefully a lot of both.
Let's talk about a little bit about the history of the company. We mentioned your
Mhm,
dad who founded the company, Navy experiences. Just kind of
mhm.
give us the origin story.
All right. So he started the company with two other partners. The first partner dropped out pretty much immediately, and then it was just him and a man named Ed Stanwick. And so they ran the company together for a few decades. Ed Stanwick passed away and left the rest of the company to my father. So that's how
Oh,
it became primarily in the Parker family.
gotcha.
So, and then about 1976, my mom came back to work because she was laid off. She will not let that story go. So she worked
Nor
for
should
Fair-Rite
she.
for, oh, nor should she. She's like, I should get at least another 2 years tacked to my to my time. But she's been, I just looked it up. She's been here almost 48 years.
Wow,
So come March. So she started, and then in 1996, she became the president of Fair-Rite and then ran the company up until the beginning of 2022, which is when I took over.
gotcha. And so your mom was an engineer, though, is an engineer.
She is. She went to RPI for electrical engineering back in the 70s when it was not very popular
Yeah,
for women to be, and she tells me, you've met my mom. She's tall and
absolutely.
blonde, and so she
Yes.
stuck out a little bit at RPI. I'll just say that.
Yeah, but I'm sure, I mean, also an extremely bright woman. So, and
Mhm.
clearly, sticking out is one thing, but kind of persevering through that, I'm sure it was not easy.
Right, and she did, and she was able to get through, and yeah, kinda
Found a
the
good
rest
gig.
is history. Yeah.
Yeah. So the company primarily started with what industries were primarily working with back in, I guess, was the 50s when it was founded?
Right, 50s, 60s. I mean, a lot from what I understand, radio, um,
Oh,
tube
right.
televisions, vacuum tubes, yoke cores that were used for back in the olden days when TVs were, much
Right.
larger. Now they're all thin,
Well,
but
Well, again, given the olden days, I believe your dad explained what your company does to me by using a AM radio analogy in your car. And
mhm.
he said, "Remember when you
Yep.
used to step on the accelerator in your car and the radio would get all staticky because the motor was turning faster?" He's like, "Our
Mhm.
product keeps that from happening." Oh, okay,
Exactly.
that makes perfect sense. So it's easy for my simple, fifth grade brain to extend that to other operations. So it makes sense to me in that regard. So let's talk a little bit about yourself. So obviously, you're not the only child, or are you? Or tell me about siblings. I mean, how did you come to this role? How long you've been with the company? Tell us the saga.
Oh boy. So I am actually so I'm the only child from my parents' marriage. So my mom was married previously and she adopted my brother and my sister from Thailand. And
Okay.
then my father was married previously and he had 6 children with his first
Oh,
wife. So it's a bit unique because I'm from a big family, but then when you distill it,
right.
it's kind of small. I was kind of the last person standing, I guess.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and so I always thought that I was going to be at Fair-Rite until I graduated, until went to do my master's degree at Cornell. And at that point, as with all families, there was a little bit of drama. And I ended up actually walking away from the family business at that point and saying, I'm just going to go do my own thing. So I
Had you been
ended up,
working a little through high school and college, or?
yeah, I had an internship at Harris RF up in Rochester. So I used to go to school at University of Rochester for my undergraduate degree. So I had some internships up there. My experience at Harris RF was great. I learned a lot, but I also learned that maybe government contracted companies was not my cup of tea. So I
Mhm.
wanted to go something, in a different direction. So when I graduated from Cornell, I was given 2 choices. I had applied and I had gotten 2 job offers, and one of them was at more of a government type company, but the other one was at 3M Touch Systems. So I
Hmm.
ended up going to work at 3M in Methuen, Massachusetts as a digital signal processing engineer because that was my major. And so I worked on touchscreens and I built algorithms and I wrote firmware and I built circuit boards for 3M. And then they saw that potential in me and they said, you know what, we want to pull you more into the management side, product management. So that's where I did my design for Six Sigma black belt. 3M supported that for me.
Wow.
They
Okay.
supported getting my second master's degree at Tufts during that time. So I was with them for about 8 years, 7 or 8 years, and it was really a wonderful experience for me personally and professionally because it showed me what a good company was to work for. You know, they
Okay.
really valued your employees. And even though 3M, you think it's a huge company, you've got Post-its, you've got Scotch tape, you've got all, down to
Sure.
N95 masks, they make
Yeah.
everything. The
Right.
3M store is awesome. So,
As,
but
as an aside, I am a longtime 3M shareholder, and we get the gift
oh,
box every
okay.
year. The goodie box comes every year with all the new
Oh,
innovations, the toys, the band-aids, the you
yes.
name it, it comes
It
out.
it
They're not
is
band-aids, by the way. It's a Scotch brand.
yes.
So
Yes.
let's be clear. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, it was a great company, and then after that, I decided to leave 3M and I went to Oracle, which used to be Sun
Oh.
Microsystems for a year, and that taught me a different skill set and a different idea of what it could be to work for a large company. So it was not as employee focused, I would
Hmm.
say, to work there. And then after that, and going through some personal things, in
Okay.
2014, I moved home, and that's when I started working at Fair-Rite again. So about 9 years after I kind of entered the workforce.
So your mom would have you. So clearly she was welcoming you back into the business. What role did you take on when you came into at that point?
So when I came in as vice president. So kind of, but with a focus on sales and marketing, 'cause she felt that that was an important piece of the business.
And probably
And
something experience you hadn't had in the other companies that in your
right,
other work. Yeah.
right. So, and it was good to understand that part of it.
So I mean, in that time, you have a little bit of you began a transition plan. I mean, your mom's still engaged, but you ended from 2014 to 2022. That's 8 years before you became CEO or president.
Mhm.
Um, did you had a game plan through that?
I wouldn't say it was a clear cut path. I think with every family business, it's always difficult to
Sure.
understand when it's right to transition, when, it's like handing over the baton, right? It's when is
Hmm.
the person ready to let go, when is the other person ready to take it on.
When
And
you're
so,
right when you get up to speed.
yeah. And so, I think it was a little challenging during that time, but now that the baton has been passed, it's been going really well. And having her here still has been great because I think part of the challenge is, when you first get in, it's like, how am I ever going to do this? How am I ever going to take this over? This is so much. It's such a big business, and there's so many lives that
Right.
depend on the
Well,
decisions that
and
I'm
that's
making.
just to I'm sure people are curious, how big is it? I mean, it is a big company by our standards. I mean, it's
Mhm.
this is not two or three people we're talking about.
No, I think right now it's well over 100 employees between Walk Hill and Flat Rock. The exact number kind of fluctuates, but we're over
Right.
100 employees. So, it's a global business. So, we've got a couple plants in China. So, it's a lot to manage and it's a lot that goes into kind of making it all work. And
Sure.
especially with the market the way that it's been the last few years, it's been challenging on a lot of whether
Is
it's
it
logistics or supply chain.
right?
Um
Yeah, I mean, is it challenging like in that, specific thing, or is it like global competition? I mean, you mentioned you're in China.
mhm,
That's a layer of complexity that most businesses, deal with through a broker or through a third party that's not actually living it. I mean, that
right.
I'm yeah, maybe we can circle back to that because I do want to keep talking a little bit about the transition,
Mhm,
because yeah, we've obviously you joined our board a year ago, and it's been great to
mhm.
have you. And we've kind of learned a little bit about you're making some changes with people and organizationally, and how's that evolution? I mean, have you got like a little soft touch, firm touch, hard touch? How's that going?
So probably about 2 years ago, I started so it was before I became president, I started what I call the department heads meeting. So twice a week, I meet with all the major players in the company. All the directors attend, and then some of the key team leaders attend, just to make sure that everyone is, what are the hot topics? What are the things that we need to discuss? Because I found that the communication within the organization could have been improved.
Hmm.
And so that's something that kind of spurred the transition, I guess, a little bit, to say, okay, well, I'm taking this on. Decisions are going to need to be made kind of in that meeting, and I can't continue to say, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that? And so I think that kind of pushed the envelope a little bit, to say, okay, at this point, we kind of need to hand it off, so that I feel like I can be empowered to make the decisions that need to be made, and I can't constantly just, kind of
Right.
undermines the whole purpose.
Empowering people is really what you're talking about. If you're bringing everybody together and then you say, okay, you come up with a good idea, and then you say, now we got to go to the boss and find out. Then we go another layer, instead of saying, all right, good, we're all on board, let's
Right,
go. And I
right.
think that's a from a nimbleness or efficiency, that's just a huge
Absolutely.
difference right there. Because I mean,
Absolutely.
even in our little office with the four of us, I mean, if somebody decides to do something and then I have to ask all the same questions that were just discussed in the meeting, no, we
Right.
figured it out. We figured it out. Trust me. Like, yeah,
Right.
okay, you guys got it right. That is important. So
Yeah.
you guys have been in China for a while, right? I mean, it's you started there. I want to say the '80s. Is that right?
Not quite. So Fair-Rite Asia, which is a joint venture, was established in 1992. I know we put in Fairlight. Our first wholly owned factory was put in 2013. So
Okay.
Fair Asia existed. They started their factory, maybe it was 2007. But what we found is that when you partially own a company in China, you don't really have the control that you think you have. And
Okay.
so we were trying to put parts over there, and they would say, yep, yep, yep. And then at the last minute, they'd be like, you know what? Never mind. We don't want it. And so
Uh,
we decided in 2013, or I wasn't here yet, but we need to really have our own factory, our 100% owned in
wow.
China. And then we quickly outgrew that factory. So when I came on, it was the expedition started to say, where are we going to move to? And so I went to China with my mom the November after I started, and we went around to a few different places, and we settled on Suzhou, which is about 6 hours northwest of Shanghai. Beautiful city, it's a very desirable city for people to live in, so attracting talent is easier there. And so that was all said and done in 2016. So that
Hmm.
was when we were able to start production there, and we've just been expanding. So just this past year, we put in a new powder facility. We keep kind of trying to expand, even though, because we know that the market's been a little soft for us this past year, but we know that's more temporary. We see it coming back, and we see it coming back pretty strong for us. So that's what we're banking on.
Is there a difference? I mean, is Fair-Rite Asia, your Chinese factory, is that
Mhm.
focused on a certain product type, or is it the same product mix that you have here, just geographically different spot?
It's just geographically,
Okay.
back in the 90s and early 2000s, trying to penetrate the Asian market, and knowing that, you know, and my mom will tell me, we could have chosen to be a small company. We could have chosen to
Mm.
say, you know what, we're not going to move to China. We'll just kind of be a smaller company, and that'll be fine. And they didn't make that decision. They said, no, we really need to penetrate this market. So they chose a distributor that we were using there, and worked with them to incorporate them as a joint venture. And it started more as a sales arm, and then it
Mm.
quickly turned into, we really need to manufacture
Make it
product here if
here.
we want to stay competitive. and
Right.
and that's kind of how it evolved.
Well, I mean, I would just think, just we talked about automobiles earlier. I would think that, the EV market alone,
Hmm.
the number of electric vehicles being made in China is, probably what double the rest of the world. So it's obviously a place where you need to be. Not to mention
Hmm.
all the other consumer electronics that are made in Korea and
Oh yes,
China and Vietnam and Indonesia. That makes a lot of sense. I can see where you went there. Your parents were really smart business people.
absolutely.
That's true. So I'm kind of picking up on that. Obviously, that's a decision you made decades ago. What's the next decision you think you're going to have to make around that, around, the global business? Obviously, it's a slightly different world we're living in today. China's not nearly as popular as it was 15 years ago.
Hmm.
There's clearly a trade war brewing, if not already, deep in one. How is that affecting you, and how is that going to manifest itself in your next few decisions you have to make?
Right. And that's a great question because the
Who
lucky thing
knows?
is I know, who knows? I mean, everyone that you talk to, it's everyone's moving away from China. They don't want to be in China anymore. I've had conversations with some of our customers who have moved out of China successfully to
Mhm.
say, where did you move to? What went into that decision? So we have some good insights. But right now, I mean, we have manufacturing in China, we have manufacturing in the United States. So we do have that value proposition to our customers to say we are essentially dual source within one company. If you don't want it made in China, we can make it in the US. Yes, it's going to be more expensive, but it's an option if it's that important to you. For better, for worse, most of the other ferrite manufacturers are in China. So it's not like we're competing. We used to have a plant way before I was here down in Mexico. That didn't really work out. And honestly, right now, given the state of Mexico, I don't think it's a place that I would want to send our employees to go. So then you look at other Asian countries. You look at Malaysia or Indonesia or Vietnam or the Philippines and say, okay, what are the pluses and minuses of each one of those? I mean, part of the thing is our product is very heavy. It's not, and so that shipping becomes a consideration into that whole equation of where would we want to go. And honestly, with everything, I mean, who knows? Who knows where the world's going to be? Who would have known that we're almost 2 years into the war with Russia and Ukraine, and now we've got this other travesty going on with Israel and Gaza,
Right.
and that's now affecting, the Suez Canal and product that goes through there. So
Yeah.
it's a crazy, it's kind of just hold on as tight as you can and make the best decision based on the data. But we've invested heavily in China, and I know China relies a lot on the United States.
Right.
So as much as they talk a big game, I think their bark right now is a little bit worse than their bite because they do not want to start a trade war with us. That's my opinion. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just we're too big a part of their economy for them to, and you kind of saw that when their president visited San Francisco. He kind of did an about turn a bit on some of the rhetoric he had towards the United States.
Yeah, the more I read about China, the more it's very complicated. No doubt about that. Has any of the sanctions, you mentioned the Ukraine war, any of the sanctions on Russia affected your business, or anything like that? So many layers removed.
Yeah, no, it really hasn't affected us. A lot of our raw product comes from Asia. We don't really rely on Russia for any of our raw materials because we
Mm,
got that question asked to us right after the war started, and so we did some digging. We said, no, we're kind of clean on that, so that
okay.
hasn't affected us at all.
And what about the kind of the expansion in defense spending and munitions production? Is that something that's a positive for business, or is that an area where ferrite's used? I mean, I assume
Hmm.
guidance systems and all these sophisticated military apparatus require electronics.
Yes, and I think we'll see that. I don't think we're there yet because we're more of a band-aid in some
Okay.
ways. But I think that as much as a travesty kind of, and it's always been that way. War is good for business, and as tragic as it is, and as much as you don't want to have that be the reason why your business is up, it's kind of how the world
I mean,
works.
things get
So
consumed that need to be
yeah,
replaced or
yeah,
destroyed that need to be replaced. You're right. It's
yeah.
sad. It's a sad truth, but it's always been the case. So, staying in China, but
Mhm.
where do you see the business in 4 or 5 years? I mean, are you on a growth plane? Are you looking at certain new industries, new products, or is it just, doing things better?
Well, we always try to do things better, of course, but we
Of
are
course.
looking
Well,
at, of
having
course.
seen having seen your teams go through the yellow belt training that we
Hmm.
did not that long ago, I believe that
Hmm.
that was a fun presentation. That was a great group.
Yeah.
They're all about continuous improvement and leaning out that process. They were loving it.
Yes. Yes. No, and we've done a lot of training of our employees. Yes, no one likes downtime, right? I mean, I think everyone this last year, at least for us, it wasn't like it had been the last 2 years where you were just putting out fires and you had too many orders that to know what to do with. But the blessing about the downtime is that it gives you the ability to focus on the future a little bit more rather than just the
Mhm.
present. And so we were able to invest in our people with training. We're able to invest in putting more kits out. So we probably, spent at least $100,000 just putting kits into labs,
Hmm.
just of our own money, just to say we want them in the hands of the people that need to use it. So that's an investment that we put in place that we know will reap benefits later down the road. And then we also do have new products and new processes that we're working on. So we just launched an NPI, so new product introduction. And then we have several planned for next year. One of the blessings about me being a development engineer is I understand that new products take much longer to develop than you think.
You know the actual fact about that, huh? The reality.
So, when I first started working at 3M, the one of the other development engineers say, "You you have your project plan, and it's great, multiply it by pi, and that's how long it will actually take you." And
Okay,
it's so true. It is very
that's funny.
true.
That's
Because
funny.
it always takes longer. So a lot of the NPIs where we had it all laid out and we're like, and we're gonna have this in Q2 and we're gonna have this in Q3 and by Q1 we're gonna have it all done. Now it's like, well, maybe Q1 of 2025 it'll be done.
Yeah.
But we're that company where we're not just going to put a product out to get it out. We want it to be right. We want it to be good. We want to make that good impression. So we do have some things brewing that expand our product line and that expand our processes over the next year that are expected to come out, and we'll definitely see a lot of growth from that. So I'm excited, and I know our engineers are excited. We're learning a lot, which is great.
Awesome. Well, Rachael Parker, president of Fair-Rite Products, Walk Hill, New York, thank you so much for being on the Council of Industry podcast, and we look forward to seeing you in the next couple of weeks.
Great. Thank you so much, Harold. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Manufacturing Matters, brought to you by the Council of Industry and sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, accountants and advisors who understand the unique challenges and opportunities in the manufacturing sector. We hope you gained valuable insights and inspiration from today's discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.